Okay, now?
Yeah.
Coming home to who you are. Yes, coming home to who you are. Coming home to who you are. With Marcus and Mark.
Hey, Marcus
Hi,
and
Marcus.
Mark. I can't hear you now, Mark. Oh man.
That's yeah, and now?
But your meter is moving for me, so I assume the audience can hear you. There you go.
Yeah,
I can hear you now. Yeah.
you can hear me. Is there an echo?
There is an echo, but can
All
you
right,
turn off
let's give it a try.
echo cancellation on your side? And if
Yeah,
not, we will charge on.
let me try that.
All
Is this
right. That's better. That's better for me.
all
Yes.
right?
All
Good.
right. Wonderful to see you, man. Wonderful to see
Yeah,
you.
likewise.
Um, let's jump right into our chapter. No long talking, because I this is a nice one, a
It's a
beautiful
big
chapter.
one. Got lots to talk about on this one. Yes.
Yeah. And for those who are wondering what we're talking about coming home to who you are. Uh, we are actually on chapter 17. This is the start of part 8, Lessons from the Barista. We find Amar, our mentor and teacher. He's in a cafe, he's processing life. That's the first scene. And then the second scene, the three friends are coming back together after being broken up, after Amar leaving the university. So this is a reconciliatory. I don't know.
Oscillatory.
They're all they're all coming back together after experiencing their breakup, and they're coming back together to start the third chapter, the third leg of it. Anything else you want to add to that, Mark?
No, it's perfect.
Hey,
Yeah, maybe just to say they're not in the same cafe. So these are two different cafes. The first part of the chapter is Amar and his experience there with the barista, and then the second part of the chapter are the three friends having their own experience there. And I think
yeah,
there's in each one of those parts there's some really nice insights.
yeah, yeah. And we are going through our book, Coming Home to Who You Are, a reimagining of education, to open up the conversation of what it means to be human in the age of AI, what it means to be an educator, to what it means to be a mentor, what it means to cross borders and boundaries to experience another culture while still holding your own culture, the expectations, and understanding what identity plays in all of this. If you want to follow along, you can copy the QR code there, get an advanced reader copy, or go to beingatfullpotential.com/ coming home to who you are. All right. Boom. Mark. Um, let's look at what the conversation is about today, just real quick, and then we'll jump into it.
Yeah, maybe we start with the first scene of the chapter where Amar has left the university on his own. It was his decision to leave. And he's in this space in between. So he deliberately, I think, has taken some time out for himself. He's not in a big rush to move into the next job, the next assignment, and he's using this time to reflect and perhaps to get even more clarity on the narrative that he wants to bring into the world of education, right? So he wasn't as effective as he wanted to do to drive as he wanted to be to drive change while he was a professor within the system. And I think he's taking some time now just to take a step back and reflect, like, what can you do, and what is it really that he wants to, what is the message that he wants to bring out, right? And so he finds himself in this cafe, and he's writing, he's observing, he's writing, he's in this very creative state.
Hmm.
And what I love is that he's finding inspiration within the cafe, just observing the people there, sitting at the table, what they're doing, how they're interacting, and it's giving him some inspiration on what makes the human experience so unique. And
Well,
that's especially relevant, in this very rapidly growing AI world that we're living in.
mm, he, so it's okay. I also want to point out that he was writing something like not very esoteric, but he was writing this deep philosophical thought, and he kept on running up against a wall. Remember? And then he's
Mm,
just like, "Hey, let me just put down my pen for a moment and just observe
mm,
what's here."
mm.
And then he starts to see what humanity is or what human interaction is. Another thing I want to mention is I think we've lost touch. Is it's a load like this happened a lot before AI. While we started to shift into the digital world, and nothing's wrong with digital, but it's we were getting away from our connectivity. This COVID happened before AI and even before COVID. The movie
Your audio is getting a bit off, Marcus.
off in the sense of it's hard to hear. Or,
Yeah, just kind of like muted or a bit mumbled. So maybe try again. Maybe it was because you
okay,
had
yeah,
your
yeah.
hand. Yeah,
Okay,
that
okay,
seems better. Yeah,
okay.
better.
Um, but when we've been pushing more into digital spaces, like I'm not a luddite. I'm not like technology, but it's humanity. Like make that effort towards making an effort to connect on a human level.
Hmm.
Um, I think we're losing a bit of that. And Amar, that's the message from the barista. She was just like, hey, yeah, I see these elements of humanity that make my job worthwhile.
Hmm.
Hmm. Uh, any thoughts on that or?
Yeah, no, and I love that. I love putting the pen down. When we're trying to make something happen, we're sitting in our office or at our desk, and it's like it's not flowing. And I love that moment when we put everything down and we say, okay, I need to change my environment. I need to change my context, right? My setting, and disconnect from what I'm trying to do and open up to inspiration and trust that something is going to come that will unblock me in my kind of creative stuckness. And I feel like that's what's happening to Amar when he enters into that cafe and he's observing people. Like, one of the things that's happening is that there's a small child that's
Mm,
playing and finding all kinds of creative ways to use a spoon, right? And he's looking at it, but he's looking at it through fresh eyes and really seeing this capacity for imagination, right, that a child
mm,
has to turn whatever object into a toy, into something playful, into a story. And he's stepping back and he's what that's amazing, right? That is truly human. That's truly uniquely human, that capacity to play with something, right? To open up our imagination. And I feel like those are the breakthroughs, right? That for him are helping him to articulate even better the importance of reconnecting with our humanity, right, in the education context. That's what he's about. And
yeah,
this is giving him some more glimpses into that.
yeah, yeah. If to just make the turn, I love how Amar sees a kid playing and the creativity there, and create. They say play is self-directed joy. Self-directed joy. That's when you're playing, and when we look at the Finnish education system, a lot of it is based on play. But it's like, where does this kid find joy? Where can we direct it? Yeah.
Mm.
Um. Tell us about our three friends when they come back. So they're in a different cafe.
They're in a different cafe. And it's after the winter break, so they haven't seen each other for a couple of weeks. And just to recap, before the winter break, so at the end of the semester, there was this breaking off where Alex, was like kind of fed up with the whole thing, and we got to see a side of him that, on the surface looked very surprising, right? He had this sort of breakdown, and he showed some anger towards the system, and he was like, I'm fed up, I'm not involved here anymore, there's no way we can get things done unless the system changes, and so he was really pretty upset. And Rosie and Kenna, were holding a more neutral and a more balanced view on where they were and how to move forward. And so this is the first moment where they reconnect, the three of them, after the break. And we see that something has changed within Alex. So he comes back, with more perspective. And it's like the opportunity to sort of clear the air and for him to show some of his vulnerability, right? Because Alex is sort of a character that doesn't show that much of himself. And I think in this reconnect, we get a glimpse of what was it that triggered him? Why was he triggered when Amar left? Why was he triggered when the salons got shut down? And it gives us a glimpse into his life, right, into his past, and I find it very powerful because he's opening up, and it feels like one of the first times that he's actually opening up and showing some vulnerability.
If we could step back a bit into the previous chapter, when you described Kenna and Rosie as neutral, my understanding was Kenna's focused on the salons. So like Alex having his problem, like he still cares for his friend, but it's just like, okay, I'm forward focused on this.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why he's neutral towards what Alex is going through. And then
Mm-hmm.
Rosie was focused at like a very nurturing person on Alex.
Mm-hmm.
So I hear you saying that they're neutral in the sense of they're not getting caught up in Alex's world or hurricane,
Yeah.
but each person has a different, what are they focusing on and what does it mean to them?
True.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not that they're not neutral, but I mean, I think of it as everybody's always active, but what are they focusing on?
Yeah.
What does it mean? And what are they doing?
Yeah. No, that's true. That's true. But I guess the surprising behavior was Alex's behavior, right? At the end of the chapter before, it's sort of something that would catch the reader off guard and go like, oh, that seems a bit odd, right?
Where is this coming
To
from?
be triggered, to be triggered so much. And I think, in this chapter we get a bit more understanding of where that's coming from.
Yeah. Where is that coming from? Maybe we can talk through it together.
Yeah,
Because I mean, we
yeah.
did write the chapter.
Exactly. Yeah.
As I remember it, he always gets his way, or he's not good at dealing with not getting his way because he's used to getting things as he wants, and especially he's preoccupied, i.e. he's worried about his startup and his things going on, and this whole salon stuff that is being pressed down or oppressed by, like, people don't value and people don't care about this. So why am I making an effort towards this? I have this over here. That was my understanding of his frustration.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely. Yeah.
sorry, one last thing is frustration or anger. It flares out because people feel they can't communicate it in a reasonable way, so they have to lash out. And I guess he felt like he could not communicate that in a rational way or in a calm way, so he has to push back on something, and that's where his anger came up. Yeah.
No, I think you said it well. Yeah. Yeah, I feel there's a rational element to his response, and there's an irrational element or an emotional element. And the rational one is simply, I only have so many hours in the day. I have my startup. I have, these things that I need to focus on. This is not working out, the way we wanted to. So drop it and focus on something else. That's a very sort of pragmatic, rational approach. But then there's the emotional piece, is what you said. Like for somebody who has, I guess, had an experience of life where things sort of come fairly easily, and is not used to being said no or being pushed back, that there's an emotional trigger that gets activated. And I think that's what we're seeing, that's what we're feeling in the previous chapter. And he hasn't dealt with that, right? He hasn't understood that piece. But when he comes back after the break, he's done that reflection, or he's started that process of reflecting where it's coming from, and he has a greater understanding of why he got triggered, and he's able to share that. And I think that this is it feels like a big breakthrough, right? Just for him individually, but also for the group and the dynamic of the group.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that he's back on board with the salons, and that he's, that's not the point. The point is that he's made a decision, right, to focus more on his own work. But at least that emotional charge and sort of the tension that it created within the friend dynamic, that gets resolved by opening up, right?
Two things I want to touch on that you said there. When you said he makes a breakthrough, really what a breakthrough is just an understanding, right? Life is filled with so many misunderstandings. And what a breakthrough is when we come down to say, oh yeah, this makes sense. And they're doing it as friends, right? So, and the second thing I want to point out is Rosie actually makes the same decision that Alex does. And she's just like, yeah, I can't continue on this because I have other responsibilities. So like they're both coming to the same agreement, they're the same eventual outcome,
Yeah.
but they again have different responses to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what's also fascinating?
What's that?
And I don't think I realized that until now, discussing it. But the same way that inspiration came to Amar when he stepped out of, the university setting, but also like, his office where he was trying to write, he was trying to be creative. He was sort of pushing that creativity, but it wasn't working. And then he stepped out of that environment and went somewhere else. And then the inspiration started to come. I think there's something similar about what happened with the friends, and the fact that they had this winter break, and they could change their context, they could change their environment, and that in that it allows us to reflect and to gain perspective, right? And I think that's what happened to all three of them, but especially Alex. He was able to gain some new perspective by disconnecting, right, and by taking some time and being away. So I think there's something very powerful about the taking time for yourself, and changing your environment.
Yeah, very much so. Get a new perspective. Change your environment within yourself and without yourself. Yeah. For these last 12 minutes, let's reflect on our conversation regarding, and before we go on, for those who may be joining in the middle, we're going through our book, Coming Home to Who You Are. You can get an advanced copy reader here. We spoke about how education must nurture the unique qualities of us. It's funny. We could touch on this real quick, and then we could go on to the next point. Whenever I see people talking about AI entering into the education space, education has been seen as a space for also caregiving. I don't think educators are babysitters, far from it. But there is an element of caring for the learner, caring for the student as they're being stressed. Learning is stressful, right? we're going to need to find a blend of how can we stress these kids on a track that's unique for them while also having them be seen, safe, and soothed, and that human element of combined with them. Amar wrote these words, and I don't think AI can do these things. So we're going to have to find that blend of mentors and guides who use AI, but there's also something unique that AI cannot do. What are your thoughts on this, real quick? Or not real quick, but what do you
Well,
think?
I agree. I think these are definitely uniquely human characteristics, just like we spoke about imagination, creativity.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually, yeah, feel like the role of education will be to nurture, well, that's what it says here, to nurture, right? To nurture these and to make it maybe even central to the curriculum. And that everything else that we
When you
need
say
to
it,
know,
what is it?
these, the deepening into our humanness and the deepening into understanding who we are, what our gifts are, what our passion areas are, what our purpose is in life. Like really that sense of self-discovery, and that education will become more and more critical in that. And that the professors of today will be the space holders for that, right? Whether it be through coaching, mentoring. I do believe that that is going to become a bigger part of what education looks like, rather than the transfer of skills and the transfer of knowledge. And that's not to say that skills and knowledge aren't important, but I do think that building those and acquiring those is becoming easier and easier by the day. And of course, we need to know how to tap into it, how to make good use of it. But that will, I almost feel like that will come as a natural consequence of knowing ourselves at deeper levels, right? We'll be much more confident and able to harness the power of these technologies, and to use them in ways that are serving humanity. So, yeah, rather than this being sort of an elective, right, if you like, or a part of the curriculum, knowing ourselves better. What if it would become the core, right? The core of what education is about, and that everything else sort of flows from that.
Mm, man, that's true. Hmm. I think the education system that was established by, if you will, Ford and all those. I mean, a system does what it's intended to do. If the system was intended to make workers and people who are void of their inner knowing and to control them, it is doing what it did. But now the system is being broken. Now, can we create a system that starts with who are you? It's beautiful. Okay. These last 8 minutes, then, when was a time you observed a uniquely human quality in action that technology could never replicate? How did witnessing this change your perspective?
You know what's very present for me right now is pure just joy. And I yeah, and I'm seeing
Hey.
that with my daughter at the moment, because
Mm-hmm.
she's just finished all her exams and she's graduating, and she has her end of year, party and ball tonight, and
Mm-hmm.
she's just like radiating joy, and
Yeah.
it's so beautiful to see, right? And it's infectious, it's one of those things that just
Just
yeah. So it's pure, and and I feel that is, it's very subtle, but it's very real too, and it does impact the quality of the space, and the energy. So I can't imagine anything other than humans having that, right?
I'm smiling at your happiness for her happiness. Like when you see
Yeah,
somebody that you care about experience joy, it's just like I'm happy for their happiness.
exactly. Yeah.
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 The the thing that comes to mind for me, and you may experience this with your daughter later, is my mother's embrace.
Hmm.
There's no other touch like the human touch.
Hmm.
Closest thing is animals, but like flesh to flesh like connection.
Hmm.
There's nothing like that. And when like I still have a vivid memory of my mother nuzzling me, speaking like Pinoy or like Filipino baby talk. Just, she would kiss me and then sniff me.
Hmm.
And if I close my eyes, there's this practice that I do where I envision love pouring into me. But at the point where it's pouring into me, it's that same feeling of where my mother used to kiss me.
Hmm.
And
Wow.
I don't think a machine could ever do that.
No. No.
It's a sense of self-soothing that she gave me when she would, I guess, self-soothe herself, but also soothe me.
Yeah.
But that's what it was love. Yeah, yeah.
And the fact that that transcends time, I think that's also something really special, right?
Hey,
It's time. It's there for you to re-experience whenever you choose to. Maybe not, probably not with the same intensity, but it's like
hmm,
it's alive, right? It's something that is alive.
yeah, yeah. It's imprinted quite literally, and on the inverse, I mean, it's there when people may have experienced something else, but then hmm. Oh, it's when you process it, and when I process it in the present, while I've never experienced physical abuse, but I'm just imagining now. I'm thinking of people who did experience it. I don't know. That's where my mind goes. Whenever I look at something, I say, "What is the inverse of that?"
Yeah, 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 yeah,
But processing my mother's love, I'm glad I have that in my back pocket.
yeah.
You know, machines. Well,
And there's something nostalgia,
okay.
also as a quality, right? And I think that's feels like a bit what we're talking about too, is to bring into the present something that was experienced in the past, right? And it's the impressions, right? It's the subtle impressions that you bring into the present moment. I feel like that's what nostalgia is about. And it's a very power for me, I find that a very powerful human experience, the experience of nostalgia.
I'll give it a bit more texture. You said bring into the present something you experienced in the past. It's the act of savoring.
Mm.
So savoring happens in the present moment. It's like I'm present with this sensation, this feeling, this taste, this touch. But nostalgia is savoring the past to bring it into the present and be like, oh yeah, I feel that. Yeah, right. It's time traveling with savoring.
Time travel, that's what it is.
Yeah. I mean, you could only experience it in the present. You could cast it forward, pull it
Yeah.
forward, and be enthusiastic. Your daughter's having her dance tonight.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yay!
Yeah.
Is her brother gonna go with her to protect her and make sure everything goes right?
No, she can handle herself.
Yay!
Yeah.
Get it, young Mark Van den Eyden. I don't know her name. That's all right. um. Well, that's us for this chapter. Next chapter, we're going to be looking at next chapter is next chapter. I cannot tell you at the
Next
moment.
chapter. Next chapter is next chapter. If you want, I can quickly help us get to that. So that's chapter 18.
Chapter
And in
18.
chapter 18, yes, we have Amar who actually manages to crystallize his thinking, right? And all that inspiration that he's gained.
Eventually
And
gets it out.
he's able to articulate that in a way that is quite powerful into into an article. And then he goes and meets up with his old friend, the editor at the university magazine, the editor of the university magazine, and from there, you know, the story evolves. So we'll speak more about that next week.
As a story does. All right,
Yeah.
Mark, wonderful to sit down and converse with you once more about our book. For those who want to
Yeah.
join the conversation, you can get advanced reader copy by copying the QR code or by coming home to who you are. All right. And thank you for being with us on the journey.
Thank you very much. Take care,
Mark, be
Marcus.
blessed. Peace.